Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any ideas or opinions expressed by myself, the guest, or a caller may not necessarily reflect the same opinions of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Enlightenment defined. It's the state of giving and receiving greater knowledge and understanding about a certain subject or situation. Evolution defined. The gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. So what then is Enlightenment Evolution? The state of giving and receiving greater knowledge as we develop from a simple to a more complex human being, living on Earth for our soul's experience. Welcome now and join us as we explore our Enlightenment Evolution Hour together. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I'm your host, Rob Gauthier. How are you guys doing today? I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is doing fine. Everything here has been wonderful, guys. Big announcements. A lot of things have happened if you haven't caught the show in the last couple weeks. So we're going to get announcements out of the way. We're going to have to get it out because we've got an amazing guest here today. And our friend Jason is a fellow podcaster. I was on his show before. The Launchpad Podcast is an amazing show. We talked about a lot of great things, and we're going to be bringing him in very soon. But before we do that, guys, I'm going to go through these announcements really quick. For the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, as you guys are aware, we now have a live stream that's happening at the Matrix Minds. So I want to welcome all of you guys from the Matrix Minds doing the simulcast at the Matrix Minds Media. Amazing platform, amazing group of people. Thank you guys for being here with us tonight, along with all of my Enlightenment Evolution Network people. Thank you guys for being here tonight too. Welcome. For the show, we've got a schedule coming up that's going to be a little choppy and dicey. We're going to work with the next couple weeks as they go. We've got some guests, and it's all about timing on getting them in. But next week, we've got a guaranteed guest, the Adam Twister, who's been in the chat a long time, finally back in the chat tonight live. Many of you don't know who he is, but he's a part of our community. He's going to be on next Wednesday. The Wednesday after that, Ryder Lee from Raised by Giants podcast, which is also on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, which we're also just featured on through all of their Spreaker and podcasts and all of the other platforms that they're on, which is an amazing network who's also running the show. So thank you guys from over there. And then we go into December. Now, December, this is where we get a little all over the place. We do have some concrete guests, but we're going to make sure to get everyone else in there before we announce it completely. I just want to thank all of you guys for coming, for being around, for being a part of our experience here at the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. And as you guys know, the network has announcements itself, and the network announcements are basically similar to that of the announcements for the show. We're being syndicated now at the Enlightenment Evolution Hour by the Enlightenment Evolution Network, which has its own YouTube channel. We will link that. Go check that out. We've got a Facebook page for it and a YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the network, do. We've also got a new show on the network, The Mothership, which has 3 hosts. They did their first episode. We'll be uploading that onto the YouTube site soon too. And I shared the link for that on all the social medias for the Enlightenment Evolution Network and the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. We're also simulcasting now every week here at the Matrix Minds Media. Our dear friends over there have allowed us to use the platform to simulcast every Wednesday, which kicks which kicks your show a little later, and I apologize for that because I know we always start at the same time. But Matthew is definitely a late night party guy, so he can definitely do it with all of the broadcasting experience he's got. So thank you for that, brother. Um, then we've got the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, which is a place where multiple shows come into the network, and they've got a great lineup, including our next week's guest. And then we've got the Conscious Awakening Network. Our shows have not appeared on that network yet, but we're in the process of getting our videos ported over there. If you guys remember, that is the place where we have all of our channel panels put up, including the 2017 channel panel, one that's never been shared to the public for free. Um, One that was the one with Daryl Anka and Wendy Kennedy and Lee Harris and a bunch of other really great channelers. Daniel Scranton, who was on last week, and that's for free, 100% for free at the Conscious Awakening Network. Um, but you have to have apps for that. The Amazon Fire app or Roku, or you can go to the website if you don't have any of those. Although I'm not sure if they've cleared out some of the little ticking issues that they had at the website yet or not. But it's amazing stuff. We've got lots of never before seen content there, but from both the channel panel and the EC Whisper. So they're great, and they are going to be sharing the show very soon. But our show is being simulcast live every week at the Matrix Minds Media, and it's archived over at the Forbidden Knowledge News Network. So that is the announcements, guys. Um, I want to tell you guys a little bit about our guest tonight. Uh, we have we have Jason, and I hope I don't mess up the name. I'm always bad with last names if they're not Smith, John, even though I've got one of the worst ones. But Petrunik, Jason Petrunik is here with us today, and he is the creator of the Launchpad podcast. Sorry, guys, my coffee has not kicked in yet. We had a late night with the kids. We barely got here in time, so forgive me for being a little stumbly here. Um, but Jason's the creator of the Launchpad Podcast. The Launchpad Podcast started as a porthole for personal development, covering a wide range of topics with some of the most influential entrepreneurs in the business and networking space, as well as people who performed an elite level in the industry, professions like Stanley Cup champions, Theo Fleury, Big Sugar, CCMA award winning Jason Blaine, Forex Juno nominee, Jerry Fine, and the list goes on of amazing people. Also, Kelly Williams, who was voted the top 100 most powerful females in Canada. And this show is an amazing, amazing port for a lot of those great speakers. Now, Jason's also passionate about something that I'm passionate about, which is something that really brought us together, which was free speech. Free speech being that of the foundation of civilizations that can openly communicate good ideas, bad ideas, get it all out there so we know what's the best one to use, what's the best one not to use, but also to not stifle creativity, to not stifle a lot of things. And this was something that was important to both of us. Um, he used that platform for the freedom of speech and expression, um, and has been leaning into that more recently because he believes that people are intelligent and people need to hear all sides, whether it's favorable or not, make their own intelligent decisions. Just because it doesn't appear as a popular opinion or doesn't appear as opinion that shouldn't be expressed, you should choose whether to listen or not. And that's something we both really agree on. Um, he brings a lot of other things to the table. He's been in broadcasting for a long time. Um, he's done a lot of great things and a lot of great work in his show so far, and brought a lot of great guests, a lot of people that we have either been aware about as we've gone through, or a few people who've been on his show who've also been on this show. So it's an amazing thing. Instead of telling you more about him, I think I'm just going to bring you guys over to the area of having the personal voice of this beautiful man talk to you himself. Jason, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, brother. I appreciate it. Oh,
Glad to be here. There we go. It's working.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful for you being here. First of all, thank you for coming in on short notice. We had Michaela Sheldon, who some of you guys were looking forward to seeing, wasn't able to make it. Something had come up, and Jason, out of the kindness of his heart, stepped in and was able to take the place and do it quickly. He was on the next round of invites for the beginning of the year, and I'm glad we got him in months and months early. So, um, the first thing I always ask everybody when they come on the show, not so much what their story is, because we will get to your story of how you got to this podcast and what kind of was the driving mechanisms and all that stuff behind that. But what shaped you to be the version of you that was able to create this story, that was able to take the path to be the guy who opens this podcast, who'd been in broadcasting, who've done all of these amazing co-creations with all these different amazing people. What were the things in your childhood, young adulthood, teenage years that opened you up to be the you that you are now?
That's a very good question. And if I really had to think about it, it probably started with my voice. When I was young, I had a peculiarly low voice, if that's a word. And and I used to like to sing as well, and I was able to sing at a low frequency as well, and that would always get people's attention. Um, and of course, when I was young, almost any attention is good attention. And I would get rewarded for this. Family members would give me $1 when I was in the States to sing a song or utilize my voice in some way. And that would be the earliest influence that I can remember in regards to like a reward system or being recognized for being different or being able to provide something different and provide entertainment, joy, etc. to an audience. And I didn't perform well in school the further along I got with it. Elementary school, fantastic. I was gifted. I went to a private school, all that kind of stuff. And as I got closer towards high school, I lost interest. My grades started to flop. They thought there must be problems at home because that's how dramatic my performance had dropped off. And one of the classes that I was interested in when I was in high school was like an audio visual class. Mr. Steve, I'll never forget this guy, where we'd be able to use our creative minds. We would do a radio report in the morning for the announcements. So some of the students would be able to do that on a weekly or a monthly basis. And then I guess what really hammered it in was because of my poor academic performance, my parents, they would say, well, utilize your tools. You have a great voice. Like maybe you should go into radio. I always heard stuff like that along the way. You have a voice for radio. And so then when it came to my fourth and inches is I went for the play that I thought would be most successful. And I decided to go to radio school. And so I went to Loyalist College in Belleville, did that for 2 years, almost failed that, but pulled it together thanks to a wonderful support staff in regards to a professor named Dave Henderson. And then the rest is history. And in regards from going from radio and ending up on podcasting, that was just a matter of fate. I spent about 20 years in that space, lost my job, and then I started going into entrepreneurial endeavors. Started getting good at that. It led to eventually doing a podcast, which was supposed to be just a generation lead to come up with some income for a company that I was working with, a good friend of mine. Here's a shameless plug, Sean at Gallant Media, who does web design, graphic design, printing, all that kind of stuff. And then when the pandemic hit, I don't know, I felt like I had a platform and I had something to say and I wasn't afraid to say it. And next thing you know, I'm really focusing a lot of stuff on mandates, which were crazy, and the free speech issue that we were having here in North America, to having a conversation with you, Rob, and channeling, which is something I didn't know that much about. I believe I may have shown a video of you to Anthony, like wondering, like, what is this? Like, can someone please explain? And Anthony being a good friend of Rob, who's also been on the podcast too, and reptilian channeling, all this kind of stuff, far out. And I just love having the conversation. It really doesn't even matter so much what I feel about it or what I believe in. That's not why I have guests on my show. The reason why I have these guests on my show is so I can explore their brain and see why they feel the way that they do. And I invite my audience to do the exact same thing. And I think the beautiful thing about being able to have conversations like this, Rob, like I've had a flat earther on my show, all this kind of stuff, is just being able to sit down, have a friendly conversation. And then, you know what, Rob? You can walk away from that conversation thinking that the earth is round. I can walk away from that conversation thinking that the earth is round. Flat Earth Dave can walk away from that conversation thinking the earth is flat, and that's A-okay. As long as we had a good time and a constructive conversation.
That's always been my perspective. This is something that as a Generation X kid at the cusp of millennialhood, um, they actually said, hey, talk to people, be kind, be considerate, speak. And if they have a different opinion of you, either listen to them or, you could actually do the whole debate thing, which is something else, or, you know, um, just kind of appease them. And when they're done talking, then you can have your done conversation. That was kind of the ethics that most people in our generation grew up with. Even for more militant styles of family dynamics, it was still something. It was a good idea to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And society hit that switch pretty hard. The pandemic was one thing that brought it about quickly, but this wasn't a new issue in Canada or the United States itself, and hasn't been a new issue for a long time. It just really was focused strongly at the time of the pandemic. And I'm wondering too that when this first part came, and you're coming into the podcast, you said it was like a port for the entrepreneurial work that you were doing, and to help work with your friend and kind of be a plug-in for that. But what kind of entrepreneurial work were you covering at first when you were doing all of that work towards the podcast?
So I had gotten into network marketing, doing shake-based nutrition, what people might call those pyramid things.
Okay.
and and I was really fortunate that the people that I worked with at the time had generated either 6 or 7 figures or beyond in that industry. And I was a real sponge, loved learning, and it was rooted deeply in personal development, which I attribute a lot to what my podcast is today, is having that core, having that center that I can tap into that lets me know sometimes when I'm way too far off center, and when I need to be a little bit more consistent with my best self. Um, and that's been such a tool. Like when someone's has done their personal development, when someone's coming from that place, it's almost like it's a different type of language. For instance, if I'm having a conversation with someone and maybe they disagree, but they will just say, like, I hear you. I'm listening and I understand. And maybe you can explain to me a little bit more why you feel the way you do. That's not how a lot of people approach conversation. They usually want to get their point across. I'm very much the same way. I have to work on trying to be a better listener, asking good questions, and let them tell me what they think, and then be able to have a better conversation overall because of it. And anyways, that led me down a completely different path in regards to the personal development, doing business for myself. And through doing business for myself, it opened up a whole bunch of different opportunities through my networking that I had done being in radio, knowing that I had a voice. Someone consider anyone that would be in radio in a prominent position would have a level of influence on other people. And I've always prided myself on being someone that people would either know, like, or trust. And those are the types of people that anyone wants to spend time with. And if you can be that person that people know, likes, and trust, then there's always going to be some business out there that you'll be successful at, because people will want to support what it is that you're doing if they have the ability to do so.
Yeah, well, and knowing, trusting, and liking comes hand in hand with talking to people every day. When it comes to having someone whispering in your ear, a lot of people are like, if I don't trust this guy and I'm listening to him hours a day, I could be influenced to whatever craziness he's got going on if he's not a conscious person, a righteous person, a nice person, a loving person,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the reason you listen to radio shows, podcasts, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that's flared up in the public also with the pandemic issue that came out too. What are we doing with the news that we listen to? What sources are we getting news from? Are we able to listen to it without falling into the propaganda and falling into that? Because no matter what side of the pandemic you fell on, it doesn't matter. There was propaganda on both sides
Mm-hmm.
being pushed consistently. Opinions that said, hey, I want you to come over to my side and be on my side, and support my people and vote for my people and spend money on my people. So it was a very intense process. And I don't think a lot of people understood uh, the depth of what propaganda is or how it works until this pandemic kind of came through. I know I was aware of it. Kalina, my wife, had studied it in college because it was part of her programs that she had to go through and graduate in order to get her communications degree, which was basically writing for corporations. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, if you're a corporate salesperson, you have to know how to use propaganda as a tool, right? So what did you find that was the most upsetting when you're this person that you want to be the best person that you can be? You want to be nice, you want to be trusted, you want to be appreciated, but you also kind of see this experience of these people taking very heavy stances, one side or the other, rared up for a fight all the time. I, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I imagine, like most people, that was kind of a shock for you to see.
Now, are we speaking specifically about like when I was in radio and things are going on in the world, or are you talking more about me now being in the podcast in that world?
Yeah, well, going out of the radio and into the podcast during the beginning of the pandemic, as all of this propaganda begins to be revved up and people are fighting over the pandemic and the situations that are
Right.
involved with it. Was this shocking to you, or was it something you kind of got used to and seeing because you were in the industry of radio?
No, you know what? Because radio is typically left wing, and radio is about causes and about celebrating whatever causes to be celebrated, or anniversaries of whatever it is that may have happened, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't like creating division. I don't even like using the term left and right, but it's just the only way that I can have this conversation and someone can kind of understand how I'm trying to illustrate the story. And for instance, there's Lord knows how many thousands, if not tens of thousands, of radio stations in Canada, and not one of them wasn't talking about how COVID was going to kill your grandmother. There wasn't one radio announcer that said, you know what, I don't know. I'm not feeling right about all these numbers. Like, I came across this documentary the other day, and I heard that if you went to the hospital and you were given a COVID test and you tested positive, and then 1 week later you got hit by a bus and you died, you would go down as a COVID death. And I thought that was really strange. Why are we doing that? Like, that's
Yeah.
not what you hear, right? You'd lose your job. Anyone that speaks out on that narrative is considered to be a conspiracy theorist. Like, conspiracy theories, or to be called a conspiracy theorist, at least in my world, that would only come out every once in a while. It wasn't a really over popularized term, uh, because it was, if anything, almost kind of just like used in jest for someone that just thinks outside the box, or for the rare person that you'd encounter, or I would encounter, that would talk about flat Earth. But now what it's done is that it's used as a derogatory term to anyone that speaks out of line to what is considered to be the popular narrative, which is basically what you're going to hear on every newscast, on every radio station that you listen to in Canada. Now, I have not been on radio in about a decade. I spent 1 year, about maybe 7 years back, and since then, my podcasts have been going on for about 2 years. And am I surprised at how much division there is? I absolutely am. And I guess for the vast majority of my life, I would be considered to be someone on the left, maybe more a little bit towards the center. But, I have voted liberal in my past, and I've never had a really strong choice or a strong feeling on pro-choice previous to the pandemic. But then after I don't know what it is, like, I think this was a huge awakening, and you can speak on this, but a huge awakening for a lot of people in regards to the infringement on their freedoms and their rights, and how quickly people would put energy into dismissing that. Like, your fellow man, like a brother or a sister, is telling you that they're suffering and they feel that they're not being treated fairly. And then to think that that person that should be there for them will slap them on the hand and say that, just fall in line and do what you're told, and listen to the government. Like, I don't know why people treat the government like it's their friend. At the end of the day, I mean, the government is there for one thing, and that is just to make sure that they are there to make sure infrastructure works properly, and then to execute the will of the people. And I don't know if anyone watches the House of Commons or has recently, but can I swear?
Yeah, swear away, brother.
Yeah, okay, because they're wasting our fucking money is what they're doing, and nobody holds their feet to the fire. There's absolute zero accountability. If you watch CPAC, it's just these overpaid bigwigs that are supposed to be there representing us, executing our will and our desires, following the party platform that they ran on to get elected, and then they spend hours a day just going back and forth with this useless rhetoric. And then that's a person that you look to, like, when your lights go out in your house, or if the heat goes, if there's an ice storm, or you don't have food to put in your mouth, like, the government generally isn't going to be there. So instead of fighting amongst one another based on what people want to do with their own bodies, don't you think it would be a lot more constructive to at least just, I don't know, have a conversation, ask some good questions, try to find some common ground, and then maybe use 10% of that energy to go after the people that aren't doing the things that they're supposed to be doing? We don't even have, after the whole pandemic, there's not even a new hospital here in Ottawa. I'm not going to get too deep into like where we're spending our money, because we could always spend our money better places, and everyone will have an idea of where that money should go. But when you're sending over hundreds of millions of dollars out in foreign aid, and we just went through a pandemic where they said we don't have the infrastructure to even manage what we had then, and we know that something like that apparently can, quote unquote, happen again, then why aren't we taking some of that money and government building the infrastructure that we need to make sure that if anything was to come even remotely close to that, that we would be able to take care of our people?
Yeah, it's a sad thing, and I think one thing you mentioned that's really important for a lot of people, no matter how you perceive the world, the pandemic, the government's normally not good at spending money. These are the people who put in $36,000 toilets into the White House and $10,000 pens to sign petitions to kick someone out of office with gold plating on them. And this is how the money that we have to put out of our pocket goes to being spent. And I've always been a liberal voter myself. I voted liberal for most people in most of my life. There was a Republican I always voted for in Michigan because the guy personally helped my dad, a Senate seat guy. But besides him, I voted mostly liberal, and it's because I believe that the country should be helping their people, and that if people are sick, they should be helped, and if people are homeless, they should be helped, because they put taxes in by buying things, having jobs their whole life. They should get some help too, right?
Mhm.
But to see the expenses flying out of control, I mean, that's why everyone's paying on the gas money. And this is something a lot of people who are friends of mine who are conservative, they say, well, it's not the right wingers doing this in America. I was like, well, yeah, but Donald Trump also spent several billions of dollars for COVID relief that went mostly to big pharmacy companies
Mhm.
and spent a whole bunch of other money in a bunch of other places. And it's not a one-sided thing. Both sides of the government, conservative and liberal, no matter what country you're from, there's always that divide of two or more. Um, that's what they do. They spend money, and I know it's unfortunate how that happens a lot, and a lot of shady things happen under there. But it doesn't surprise me at all that people on both sides weren't happy the whole time, and seeing one side in control spending money in one way and the other side spending it the other. That's always an issue, but the amount that was spent was hugely egregious. And when we as citizens spoke our minds, we were told, "Shut up, or you'll never be able to use this platform again." And that
Mhm. Mhm.
that to me was the fire on my belly. I'm like, I don't care if people want to do anything. If they want to jump over here, jump over there, they want to take a vaccine or not take one, wear a mask or not. I don't care if they want to argue with each other, as long as you're not threatening people's lives, or creating a place that tries to get other people to, harm others, then you should be able to say and share and speak what's on your mind.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was a bad place place to
Yeah,
be at.
and still the repercussions. Well, we can talk a little bit later on about that divide and how like thoroughly disgusted I am by it, and mainly by people that feel the way that you and I do. That, and I know like, this is a very unique audience that I'm speaking to right now, and that I know that I'm assuming that many are into the astral realms. I hope I'm saying this properly, or I'm getting the lingo right.
Yeah, most
Right,
most of our listeners from the Enlightenment Evolution
right.
Network are very much into that, and a lot of people in Matrix minds, yeah, it's a
So,
metaphysical thing. Yeah,
so we're
absolutely.
working towards enlightenment here, and I'll use the example of what would apply to many even outside, well, outside this group, but like as far as the Bible, and a lot of people are on a path or whatever religion that you might be into, for argument's sake, is that it's a lot of it is about turning the other cheek, right? And we just went through, like myself, being an unvaccinated person. I, and I'm a biracial male of 45 years, and I've been so fortunate to make it through my life with very little prejudice, uh, and very very little of that being because of my color. I'm very fair skinned, and then I make a decision that I don't want to put something in my body because I was, well, kind of given a choice in regards to the beginning, to where we were just looking to get to 70%, and then all of a sudden it turned into they wanted everybody to do it. And the backlash from the people that feel that they were harmed, that they were degraded, that they were made to be second class citizens. Like, I understand and I empathize because I was that person too. But now to be on the other side of it, not to say that it's over, but to be on the other side of it now and having the coin flipped, and to now want to point the finger and say you were wrong, I don't think, my personal opinion, is the right way to go about it. People will come around to whether or not they're wrong on their own. They know, and they don't need to be told, and nobody likes to be told either. And so, if we are really trying to come from a place of love and abundance and enlightenment, it's being able to forgive simply because you have the knowing. You know you were in the right. You knew you made the decision that was best for you no matter what. And maybe
Mm.
there were some ways that you and I or anyone else behaved. It was interesting because I made a post on my Facebook talking about this, and there was a lot of victim mentality, like, I will never forgive them for what they did.
Yes.
And like, listen, the person that's acting like victim, there's there's a chance that they were sharing their point of view and their opinion in a very malicious and degrading way. Like maybe they have some people to apologize to as well.
Yeah, that's very true. I hear from people who I know who were vaccinated that, it's like the unvaccinated people have been so horrible towards me. Like, I hope the shot kills you and this. And then the unvaccinated people I talk to say, these vaccinated people are just horrible. We're going to ruin society. We're going to kill our grandmothers. We're going to kill. So it's not a one-sided thing by any means. And I've seen it happen on social media both times. And, you know, in light of the new things that come out and the information that's been coming out about vaccinations maybe not being, what they thought they were, or how they worked, or whatever the case is. I'm not even going to go in that. I'm not qualified to go in that. YouTube, if you hear me, Facebook, if you hear me, I'm not a qualified doctor. So, um,
Yeah.
but from what I've heard through the news, and a lot of social media and people who are trying to bring that story back out again, what I've heard a lot of people say is the same. I will not forgive. I will not forget. And I can understand going through the pain of being pushed against, of being ridiculed. Me and Kalina chose the opposite to both sides of our whole family. Both sides of our whole family went one way, and me and Kalina went the other way. And we did deal with the backlash of that. We had to argue our points out and talk to people about it and express our opinions about it, and, told that we were this and that. And it was a painful situation. But as it goes by, as the time ticks, all of that's good. And that's because it was family. But I've also lost friendships because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and those things dig deep at the heart. And I can understand why people are upset and angry, but I also don't want that anger to be the new reason for divide, because that was the old reason for divide. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like a lot of people who don't want conservative and liberal people to come together, because then, you're not going to vote for the right people, or spend money in the right way, or whatever the case is. It's better if you're fighting. So these people continue to kind of bring out these things that poke at these open sores of the collective consciousness. And I think you're right. If we're going for enlightenment, enlightenment is to be the best you that you can be, which means you have to see the part of your creation of your own world, the way that you deal with the experiences in your own world. Someone in the chat said, I'd really love to hear what your definition of enlightenment was. I know you shared a little bit about it. Do you have that definition?
Oh my God. True enlightenment? Um, when I think of that next level of enlightenment, which I'm not sure I'm going to be able to achieve in this lifetime, but to be able to just like see the world as energy would be like that type of enlightenment would just be mind blowing to me. Or to be able to even channel like you do, to be outside of this world. It's basically being. I'll give my definition, but I mean, I'm explaining my higher definition of like what I really think that word means, and it's just being able to see the world from a perspective that most people can't see, a rare air.
All right.
And I believe that's why it's so difficult to truly achieve. I mean, the ultimate definition of the word for me. Now, if I was just to dumb it down like a little bit for like what is enlightenment for me, like Jason Petrunik. For me, it's just working towards being the best person that I can be while I'm here. Show love where maybe some people wouldn't. To be understanding where some might shut it down. To like, I forgive. I say I'm sorry all the time, and I don't feel like I'm losing anything because of it. I want to live my life to leave a legacy behind, that people talk about me in a wonderful way when I'm gone. And then, you know what, I could live a different type of enlightenment through the mouth, ears, and eyes of other people, for Lord knows how long to come. who knows how long our podcasts are going to last, Rob? Who knows what an
Sure.
everlasting feel, impact that we're going to be able to make on future generations. You never know.
Yeah,
We could get hit by a meteor, Rob, and the only thing that is left behind is Rob Gautier's Enlightening Hour podcast, and then they build a whole cult around you.
Let's, you know what I mean? Let's hope not. Let's hope not the religion of Rob. Oh my God, that's not a great one. Yeah, but you can imagine. This is something I talked with one guest about. The ancient pre-hell and heaven concepts of Christianity. The way that someone became immortal was through their actions and the legacy that they could leave. And it sounds like to me what you're saying is that you want to make sure you leave a legacy on this earth that makes it better when you leave than what it was before you got here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same with me. And now I'll take my own perspective of enlightenment because I think it's worth sharing too. I think the true form of enlightenment, the one that all of us in spiritual community think about and want to talk about and want to be a part of, I think that it's something that most humans will never get to, and that's okay. Is it possible? Yeah, for sure. But it takes a lot of self-work. It takes a lot of adjustment of beliefs and thoughts and psychology and emotions and all the things that are really hard for humans to do by themselves, especially in large groups. So maybe that won't happen. But your definition of enlightenment in doing the best that we can do and being the best us that we can do and be, that's to me, that's enlightenment. If you're going to actively work to make yourself a better person each day, whether it's internally or the actions you have externally, then you're doing something right. That's my perspective. So I appreciate you sharing on yours. So all of these things, the painful hurt that has gone by, the divide that was tore the world in half, honestly. If we're being honest about it, it kind of ripped the whole planet in half with how people felt and thought. As someone who shares that similar interest of me of trying to get people who see opposite perspectives to find common ground and common place, what's the first stepping stone? What has been your first attempt to bring that forward?
In regards to bringing people together?
Yeah. Trying to bring those separate perspectives to a common ground place. Because I've seen you doing it all the time. You're doing it on your podcast. You're doing it on your social media all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first step? Is it just sharing what's on your mind?
That's another good question, Rob. I think it's just through leading by example mainly. A lot of my lives anyways that I do, where I'm reaching out to people or people potentially catching what I have to say that generally wouldn't maybe tune into my podcast, it would be leading by example. I document stories that I'm living right now and basically executing the action steps that I believe other people should if they're looking to make the most out of what can be sometimes a dire situation. And it's not easy. And it takes calming the ego a lot. Our ego wants to say, F you. Our ego wants to say, I'm not going to apologize to this guy. I didn't do anything wrong. I just didn't want to get a vaccine. Why am I going to say sorry to anybody?
Right.
And today I sat down with a good friend of mine, Pat, who I have not seen in 2 years. And I don't even think Pat remembers telling me that he didn't want to see me very early on in the pandemic. His wife didn't want him, so he said, his wife didn't want him hanging out with other people because she would be considered a high-risk category. And I reached out recently and just said, would you like to get together for coffee? I could have said, my ego wanted to say, hey, now that we know everything was bullshit, would you like to get together and have a coffee? Like, now that everything is safe, do you still want to go out and meet me? Because that was me wanting to basically to exercise some leverage that, I was kind of right, and shake my finger. and it was absolutely unnecessary. So I just I put the work in, and I just asked him if he wanted to go for coffee. We had coffee. We obviously had the COVID conversation, and a lady actually got up and moved from where we were having that talk. Yeah.
Yeah, some people don't like contentious hot topics.
They didn't want to hear it, and that's fine, right? And he shared his views, and I shared mine. And I would like to think that if we could both be above one another, like just floating in space and listening to the conversation, my friend would listen to how he was talking and how angry he was and upset at people, and how I was able to manage my calm, right? Like I wanted to see him over the 2 years. We didn't even talk about that, whether or not why we didn't spend time together. But I am more than willing to give a lot of my power away in conversation as well in regards to being right. I don't care if the other person comes across right or not, or if I think they're wrong. I don't even necessarily have to go out of my way to correct them. I will just let them have their opinion. And I'll say, well, my opinion's a little bit different, and we'll just leave it at that. He really hated Donald Trump for whatever reason. Like, I mean, I don't know Donald Trump, so I don't put a lot of effort into what type of person that I think he is. He's definitely a person I'd love to sit down, meet, have a conversation with myself so I can make my own judgment. But he was really, really upset. And here I am on the flip side. I mean, I was basically persecuted by Justin Trudeau, as well as 15% of other Canadians. And Lord knows like what other slice of the pie were very uncomfortable with his politics because they went through with a medical intervention that they quite possibly would have said no to if their job wasn't threatened, or if he wasn't speaking in a derogatory manner, calling people racist and misogynists and hate speech, basically saying that no unvaccinated person is going to sit next to a vaccinated person, on a plane or a train or a bus. It's like, I remember this stuff because it hurt.
Yeah.
It personally attacked people.
It broke your heart,
It did break my heart.
Yeah.
I put this guy in office originally.
Yeah.
That's where my vote went. And, obviously it has not gone there over the many, many years now, but I would have never thought that he would turn out to be tyrant-ish. I would never think that he would speak out exclusively about what a piece of trash I am based on the fact that, like, I didn't want to get a poke. I mean, he doesn't know my story or why I do or why I don't. He went to the black. My point is that I could harbor a lot of hate towards that man, and I don't. And yet my friend is really upset at Trump because of what he says. And like, I decide where I'm going to put my energy and what type of energy that I want to put out there. And, the convoy was the same thing. Justin Trudeau went out for the Black Lives Matter rally here in Ottawa. And there was about 5,000 to 7,000 people. It was like in the dead of COVID too, where people shouldn't be gathering. And I wasn't able to I couldn't open my business at the time. And yet people are going out to, but I mean, I understood why they were rallying it, and I supported it because I didn't want my business to be closed anyways. But people took Black Lives Matter very seriously because it was something that was massive in the States. They heard a lot about it in the lefty news, and generally it's celebrated, even though it's surrounded by a lot of violence, a lot of looting. I don't know if you've seen it. I definitely have. And then, so interestingly, months later, in the dead of winter, we have a convoy here in Ottawa, and the news is talking about how awful it is. We have millions of people that siphon through the city. We have hundreds of thousands that are at rest stops, gas stations, small towns lining the streets, big highways, overpasses, and then people they dismiss it like it's nothing. And that's the strength and the power and the propaganda that media has, that they can tell you that a Black Lives Matter rally is what matters, and that's good. With loads of violence, deaths, billions of dollars of losses from fires and damage and all that type of stuff. And then you have a convoy here. Nothing like that. There were no fires. There was no violence. Were there maybe some people saying, like, take off your mask, like that thing is fucking stupid? Maybe. That happens whether the convoy is here or not.
Yeah, that was a point of contention well
That
before
was a point
the
of contention.
rally came. Sure.
My friend Pat was talking about how loud the horns were. Pat never went downtown. I know how loud the horns were. I was there 5
Yeah, you
times.
covered that live too, didn't you?
Yes. So it's amazing, the opinions that people have that get planted in their head through media, that they don't even show up there, but they speak about it like they were there. And I'm the person that was there that can speak on it factually. It's like it's absolutely crazy. And I was really disappointed how many people had one of the largest scale demonstrations on the planet, and quite possibly the largest demonstration ever on Canadian soil in regards to a protest. And people decided to watch the news opposed to go downtown and check it out for yourself. This is a
Yeah.
sad state of affairs.
Well, yeah, but I imagine that was going to be a natural reaction anyway. The people who weren't going to go to that rally were also people who were afraid of having themselves around other people, especially if they knew they weren't going to wear masks, or especially, because they were already predisposed for that anyway, being someone who opposed that. Um, but you're right, easily going and peeking your head out would be a lot better than drawing conclusion from the news. And see, this is something too I want to get into the differences in a lot of things that a lot of people saw. Um, what I saw with the Black Lives Matter movement tends to be opposite of what a lot of my friends who are more conservative saw. A lot of people in the conservative realm kind of saw it as a place where violence took place, and where their demands were trying to be met through violence. I saw the majority of people who were there were people who were going there for a cause that I also agree upon. I also believe police shouldn't be killing anybody.
Right.
And I believe, through spending the majority of my time in my teenage years and in my young 20s with mostly young black men, um, I saw a lot of cops doing things to them that they never did to me when I was by myself. But if I had one or more of them in my car, we were all getting pulled, thrown over, tossed the car, whether we were up to no good or not. And
Right.
sometimes we were up to no good, and sometimes we were.
Not up to any good.
So this movement that I saw, unfortunately, got political, and the
Mhm.
politicians took it over and made it their banner to get more votes, and that's when everything went real bad.
Mhm.
Because what started out as a good cause, for helping bring awareness to the difference in the way that people are treated by police sometimes in certain neighborhoods. Even if crime is high, I know when crime is high in a neighborhood, police will be more active and be more aggressive. That I get that. But just
Yeah.
from my experience of being around that community and being in those neighborhoods for the majority of my young life, it was what I saw as politicians took over this movement and tried to make it into something. And it broke my heart too, because there was a lot of great things that came from the awareness of that, but
Mhm. Mhm.
anger from people piled up, because that's a sore point, and that's why the news kind of held on to it, because it uses those sore points to bring more divide. But I
Right.
remember from the time I was a teenager until the time I became 30 or 40, racism had gone way down in my daily life, and all of my friends of color who I spoke to, they agreed. When I was a kid, I definitely got called the N word a lot more than I do now as an adult.
Mhm.
And my parents aren't treated disrespectfully by police as much anymore as they used to be. When I was a kid, I was 13 or 14, a KKK rally came to the local town, Three Rivers, which was a half black school. These were the kids I were hanging out with and spending time with. Um, and the KKK rally came because a bunch of white people got pissed off. So that was happening. But
Mhm.
the majority of every white and black person in that town came together in that moment and was throwing bottles at the KKK, calling them names, which I don't like violence, but it was funny back then because I was
Right.
really angry and stuff too. So yes, I totally get what you're saying though. What the video that I saw from that rally, there were only a few people who were really aggressively yelling at the truck rally, and those are people who had also had to go through the years of being talked badly about by media, by politicians, called murderers, kept away from dying family members, on and on and on and on. So
Hmm.
yeah, anger is a part of feeling like a target for a long time. I can
Right.
absolutely feel that too.
Hmm.
Um, so now that the pandemic has been officially called over, even though some places are still keeping the restrictions in place and resistance is in place,
Right.
um, does it feel different now to you, being on somewhat of the other side of that? You had always
Yeah.
tried to bring people together, but for you personally, with your experience.
Yeah. Like I, I'm taking time to rest, and I think it's important that people take time to rest. And I know some people that are hyper vigilant about that next, boot that's going to drop. And I'm like, you need to take some time to rest and celebrate the wins, right? Like if you watch any, the Romans back in the day, or the Vikings, and they didn't go from like battle and then just mourn the loss of and relive all the horrible moments of war, right? They would celebrate in between. They won the battle that day, and they're going to celebrate and live that night like it might be their last, because they know that there is potentially some impending doom moving forward. And listen, I don't think this is over. Uh, I have now, like, I think, like many that have just taken some time to do some basic steps towards like what the heck just happened right there, is that there are going to be other things, but to enjoy the things that we did not have. Like I'm enjoying the things that I did not have before. I'm much more careful about where I spend my money. Like I know that businesses didn't have much of a choice. We would have loved for all the businesses to say like no vaccine passports, and we're all going to say no, yada yada yada. Like I don't know, maybe my favorite restaurant, the owner of the restaurant has a son that's incredibly sick, and it's a lot of money for their son's medication. So he's not about to go against, the government and make a stand and potentially lose anything to where he can't provide for his child that needs care. Or it could just be a kid that wants to play soccer, or a wife that likes to do her shopping. Whatever it might be, people have their reasons.
Yeah.
So I didn't take it personally. It hurt me. I was upset that people didn't stand up, because unified, if we all said no, it wouldn't happen. But I generally just want to go about in enjoying my day to day. I can't wait to book my plane ticket to go somewhere warm this winter.
Mm, yeah.
Like that's exciting for me. If anything, I celebrate the wins that it's given me, as painful as it's been over the past 2 years, right? It's when you're in pain, when things are difficult, that's when we grow. And throughout this experience, I have become a much better listener. As much as I love talking, Rob, I've have become a much better listener. I can empathize at a level that I never have been able to before. I am able to not take things personally. I'm able to go to that table a lot easier than before and walk away just having a good conversation and not having to press my opinion on others. And feeling really good about the fact, Rob, that I proved to myself that if there's something that I believe in strong enough, that I'm willing to follow through with it at all costs. There's nothing that has come into my sphere previous to COVID and the whole vaccination debate that really pressed my convictions as strongly as this. And to know that when I was backed into a corner and the vast majority of people were doing one thing, that even though I was being ridiculed, I stood my ground. And not only that, I stood up strong with my shoulders back and my chest out, and I spoke my truth. And I came from a place of love. I did my best to come from a place of love, abundance, and understanding, and that if anything were to happen to me, like just if tonight was my last night on planet Earth, that people would at least take a look at the work that I've done over the past 2 years and say, like, you know what? More people should have tried to have approached this discussion the way that Jay did.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a very powerful thing to go through an experience and receive conviction for your personal stances, your personal perspectives, and many people who didn't get vaccinated, in their own perspective, their personal freedoms at every level, their ability to speak, their ability to exist, their ability not to have an enforcement law from the government against your own desire to do with your own body. That's a powerful thing, and I've talked to so many people about this. The beautiful thing is that genuinely everyone who's ever came to you when you were saying, "Hey, this is my perspective. I don't want the vaccine. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be around it. I don't want it forced to me." People came to you and said, "I took the vaccine," whether they took it willingly or felt coerced, and you always gave them perfect respect as long as they were being kind to you, or civil at minimum. You would always give him that respect, and that was one of my favorite things I saw about you when I had first met you, and first connected to you, through Anthony. And when that happened, and I saw that you were doing the same thing I was trying to do, share my perspective and make people who were vaccinated understand the pain of the unvaccinated and vice versa. The fears of the vaccinated to the unvaccinated and why they were so reactive. It was an important thing for me, and seeing someone else doing it at the level I was doing it too was really amazing. And I've come to my conclusion on the whole thing. Fear was one of the major factors on both sides. The fear of death for people who felt that everyone should get it, even if by force. That fear drove that. The fear of their mortality, the fear of a loved one's mortality, and fear of loss of freedom drove the other people who were aggressive towards others for not getting it, or when they didn't get it and wanted others. But there were, from my perspective, so few people who wanted to understand the other side, who wanted to
Mm.
understand why people felt, and they were so much into their fear that it really overtook them. And I'm like you, whether you're vaccinated or not, I don't care.
Mhm.
I don't care. It's none of my business. If you want to share that with me, that's wonderful. If you did, you had a reason. If you didn't, you had a reason. And those reasons were probably pretty strong either way.
Mhm.
So whatever it is, you do that and grant me the same respect for me.
Yeah,
Um,
and at the end of the day, Rob, it doesn't matter on so many different levels, whether someone is poked or not, because there's a lot of people that didn't want to, that did as well. Everyone has their reasons, but at the end of the day, we all lost because as we spent time fighting amongst ourselves, we were pretty much dictated to. Like, we didn't think for ourselves. We all know this. We say it. It's not an unpopular term that it's about keeping the masses occupied, right? Keep them fighting, and then the powers that be will have a path of least resistance to achieve whatever their end goal might be. And I believe their end goal in doing this was to obtain more power, more control. And I mean, like, listen, I don't know why people think that that's so crazy. I mean, if I run a business, do I want people that are compliant and do what I say, or a whole bunch of people that think they know a lot more than I do? Now, for a real good entrepreneur, they're going to want a whole bunch of great people around them that maybe will offer up some great suggestion, maybe people that have bigger brains than they do, because they will bring great ideas to the surface and everyone can flourish and grow. But not a lot of people are confident enough to do that.
right.
Right? A lot of people like to lead through authority. And that's what government is. In no way, shape, or form are they trying to be your friend and make you a better person. So we don't need as many people in government anymore. Right? So we don't need them going to the House of Commons. Like, I couldn't understand why they were going to the House of Commons at all during COVID if it was so dangerous. Like, we've kind of gotten this whole Zoom thing down. Like, why don't
Yeah,
we
Zoom
why don't we
exists.
just stick with that? Right? Like, it's working.
Well,
But yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Well, yeah, it's one of the lady who's the governor of Michigan, where I live, Gretchen Whitmer, got under a lot of heat because she put down one of the top four heavy lockdowns in the country, and her husband was out on Memorial Day trying to go out on the lake on the boat, and that was a law she made. You cannot be on a boat, even
Mm,
in the Great Lakes, which are the largest freshwater lakes in the world. Even if you're by yourself, you cannot go out there. And her husband was trying to do that, and she got caught several times without the mask. I don't care if a politician really thinks it's in the best interest for people to wear them and they're fighting for people to wear them. But if you obviously don't if you're not doing it yourself. Uh,
right.
and hypocrite, hypocriticisms, it's not my strong suit. It's very much a pet peeve of mine to see someone say something that they want you to do and that they are doing and end up not being done. That's why I don't like a lot of politicians in general, because
Right.
99% of them do that for a living. They tell
Mhm.
you one thing and do another. And I'm compassionate for people who think that they can do something and just can't make it get done and have their best intention. But that's not what we saw through a lot of things with this whole pandemic and on both sides. But there were some people who fought from compassion, and even if they didn't think the same way I thought about it, I was happy to see them actually doing it from a good place.
Mhm.
It just tended not to be very many politicians. I can think of three or four tops that were actually out there saying what they felt and trying to do the best from their perspective on that too. So yeah, it's amazing to see how many things shifted in this whole time, and with this whole pandemic situation. And I'm glad the censorship's been lessened about it, where we can even like a year ago, we would be kicked off
Mhm.
Facebook and YouTube immediately just for saying any of these words.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that that's picked up a little bit, but I think the main end of censorship should always be um, if you're threatening to kill or harm someone, that should be about the limit. As bad as other speech can be, and as much as I don't like it, I still think people should be able to say what they need to, because I would like
Mhm.
to know who the assholes are and who the racists are and who,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they say it, I'll know who they are, and then I'm going to stay as
Right.
far away from them as I can.
Huh.
And then,
All right.
you know,
Yeah, I get it. It
yeah,
it, it was fascinating today. I was watching a segment. A gentleman named Charles Barkley, a basketball player, Hall of Famer.
yeah, yeah.
Love this guy. I love his commentary. But he was asked to come on a show and talk about I think it was just one of these superstars that's in trouble. Oh, Kyrie Irving, I think it was, in regards to he posted a link to a movie and that offended the Jewish community, and so he was being reprimanded for doing that. I don't know the circumstances and the full story, but that's just the gist of it.
Hmm.
And Charles Barkley at one point, and this was just really interesting because I don't look at things, Rob, so much as color. Even though I have like a half my family, which is black, I'm biracial and I have a white side of my family too. But it was really fascinating to hear this statement come out of his mouth. He says this freedom of speech thing has gone too far,
Mm,
right? And I thought, like, wow, like, can you imagine, like, you said even just like when you were growing up, the amount of racism that you saw, like a Klan rally in your town, stuff like that. And it wasn't that long before then that it wasn't untypical for black people in the South to be swinging from trees. Like, this is the world that we lived in. It
right.
right, like Mississippi burning. What turned things around is that it was one black person in a car with the white people. The white people went missing, and then that kind of stirred up the rest. And like, this is what's happening in America still. And to think that uh, a race, someone that, at least I won't have him represent a race as a whole, but to think that a black man in America that is as privileged as he is, that has made it so far, like what a contrast in between, a black in America in, the 1930s or the 1940s and today. And then to say, like, I think we should rein in free speech. That's almost like saying, I think black people voting or ladies voting is a little out of control. That's how extreme I heard it in my ear.
Yeah,
Right?
I
Is
can
that like,
imagine.
I just thought that was crazy. That that's what that's what we fought for so long. Like equality, right?
Well,
That everyone has an equal voice. And then to say, like, I think everyone should have an equal voice and equal treatment, but the danger is when it comes to freedom of speech is who gets to choose like what is good and what's bad. Like you hear this term misinformation all the time now. Like who gets to decide what misinformation is? Like
mm,
is flat earth misinformation? To some yes, to some no. And as you described like early on when you were introducing me, it's like, listen, I'm not going to say even whether or not someone is smart enough to know whether the earth are flat or not. It's just there are people that have the opinion that it is, and there's people that have the opinion that don't, and both should be able to have the opinion. And why should I have to say, well, one is right and one is wrong?
yeah,
It's their reality, right?
absolutely.
So
What with this Charles Barkley thing? I'm interested to know how did the black side of your family take that? Did they have an
I
agreement with you, or did you even talk to them about it?
I didn't have a conversation with about them. I'm pretty sure they would have said something along the same lines, like because the context he was saying it in is like you can't just say anything. And I'm of the mind that like yeah you can say anything. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be nice. Like you said, it's this way of being able to like sift and sort through the bad people. And no, you shouldn't be out there throwing out racial slurs. No, you shouldn't be using hate speech. You shouldn't be telling another person that you're going to want to cause harm to them, right? But what I'm really focused in on is more so the fact that people have to be held accountable for what they say. There are things that are most definitely inappropriate, and there should be slaps on the wrist if they do encourage these negative behaviors. But
Oh,
outside,
absolutely.
yeah, but outside of that, like we have to let people be able to say what's on their mind because, like you said, that's an opportunity for people to identify what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah, and it gives our society an opportunity to see this is what we don't want. Like the Klan rally was the best example I could think of because it was the thing that most people hated most, even though there were a few people there who were cheering for him, things like that. Very few, but a couple. It also let us know who the people in town were who would support that kind of ignorance. And as much as I hated felt a feeling of hate towards everyone on that stage and everyone behind that side of a fence. Even at that moment, I believed that they should have the right to be there
Mhm.
because that gave me the opportunity to see all these people. It gave me the opportunity to know that I can't hate someone because of the color of their skin. It gave a chance to reinforce that because before that, my dad being in the military, where we were around every color, every creed, every religion, I didn't see that type of separation and hate. I never had seen that before, and to see it
Mhm.
that way made me realize that I wanna fight against that at any cause, anytime, anywhere. So, how could we get these triggers in our lives that teaches us to be responsive to the things that are most dangerous in our world if we don't give that danger a chance to open its mouth?
Mhm. I had some what people would consider to be controversial politicians on my show, and I have made the effort to reach out to all political parties, but the people that ended up on my show were from the PPC, which are considered to be far right, which I don't understand due to their political platform, which I have taken a look into. And as far as people that are qualified to be a politician or even a prime minister, even though you may not agree with his politics, I'm just saying pedigree alone. Maxime Bernier has done it pretty much all. And I had a really great conversation with him that I enjoyed. And what I enjoyed most is that he's a party leader that appears on podcasts. Like everyone says that they want transparency from their politicians, but these politicians aren't willing to give up their privacy. They're not willing to be transparent, right? They will take the silver spoon reporter that has been screened by the CBC or whoever it is before they're able to, they know the questions that are coming is what I'm saying basically.
Right.
And then I had Randy Hillier, who is most definitely a wild card. Okay, that guy is not Prime Minister of Canada material, but he does have some really intelligent points of view, even though he is sometimes just so out there. And one of the things that he said on my show, and this is the absolute gift of being able to do this podcast, is hearing some of the greatest wisdoms of individuals, whether you agree with what they're saying or not, but just like, their fundamental truths and some of like just their nuggets. And he said, which I'd heard before, but he just put it in a way that really resonated with me, is that if we just, in regards to this COVID thing, if we don't have people sitting down at the table and having a conversation and disagreeing with one another, then how are we ever going to come up with good policies moving forward? And that's just in general, right? So I was really concerned with the whole COVID conversation when, there's these scientists that are saying all the good stuff, right, that you're seeing on the TV. And then you're having these other virologists, some of our most brilliant minds, including two doctors that appeared on Joe Rogan. I won't even bother mentioning their names. I want to make sure this stays up. I don't even know what is okay with YouTube or what's not anymore. But other doctors that spoke on kind of like the other side of things. And I think we should just have a more open dialogue about what's happening here. And immediately the doctors that just didn't go with the narrative are like the outcasts. Like, they're doctors too. Like, how come all of a sudden, like after you just said that we need to be taking a look at the science, that there's somebody else that's also in that science that dedicated their life to science that's saying something that should be credible is not, because it's not what the man on the TV screen said, right? To where media gives that person that added bit of credibility. Like, if you're not on TV, you don't exist, kind of, in regards to the majority, right?
And that mindset probably should have died out in the 90s when TV was actually still highly relevant. The internet is where most people go to now to get a lot of their news, even if it's through these major media sources still.
And you get criticized for it. You get criticized for doing your own research when it came to that conversation. It's like, you'd say, well, I looked at this and I looked at that, and I say, well, that's conspiracy stuff, right? Like, are you a doctor? There was a meme that was making the rounds over and over and over again. Some guy sitting on the toilet with his smartphone, like doing COVID research. Because, right? Because the experts, like all the people that are experts, because they do some research on the internet. And at the end of the day, wouldn't it be amazing, Rob, if we lived in a world to where, okay, we have the doctors that are saying it's one way, and then we have some doctors that are saying it's the other way. Like, why did we not bring these doctors together in regards to, like, in the best interest of everybody, like the world, of science, and have them compare notes to where maybe there's something that either side could be missing?
Right. That was common practice
Right.
up until COVID came, where everyone, even the far out ideas that would come in, were looked at. Other scientists would peer review, and they'd say, no, you got it way off. And then it would be over. That idea would be flushed in the garbage, and a new one would come. It was very frustrating for me to see a lot of these things happening. I went straight to the scientific journals. I went to the research study journals. I never listened. I would listen to the news, but I'd make sure I listened to both and then see what it was compared to the journals. And then I would read credible science publications that would go through the journals and make their own perspectives from it. And a lot of the things I was sharing, I was like so excited. Hey guys, asymptomatic people don't spread this very much. It's almost unheard of. And people are like, "Are you dumb?" And I'm like, no, look, the biggest place in the world, ground zero for the virus at Wuhan, 10 million people were in this study. This is a huge thing. No, you're an idiot. And I'm like, what? I'm trying to help everybody out to know that, hey, if you don't have symptoms, there's a good chance you won't get someone sick.
Right.
I took all this very seriously. My son, I've got pictures of myself from 2016, 2017 with a mask
Mhm.
on because my son had the swine flu in whenever that came out, 2008.
Mhm.
And I thought we were all going to die. And after that, I made sure that anytime anyone in my house was sick and they wanted to go within, 20 foot of my kid, you put the mask on to make sure he doesn't get sick, right?
Mhm.
But to hear some of the perspectives that came, knowing the science of masks and other things for a decade with my
Mhm.
son,
Right.
going from sick people to healthy people wearing it, it just didn't make sense. A lot of those things that they shared and said, and still to this day, a lot of my mind's boggled by a lot of the ways that people interpreted what they did see and hear that came from good, credible sources, and then just pick little tiny pieces out that they wanted to strengthen their side. I hate to do this because we're getting shorter on time. We could talk about this all day. It's not something we've talked about on the show a lot with many people, but it's something that's important to talk about. I want to ask you a question that came into my private chat. You were at the truck rally. You paid close attention to that. Do you know what they did with the funds that were taken from people in that rally? What the government ended up doing with those funds or not?
I'm not sure because they froze the first big lump that came in. Basically, they raised 9 million,
Right.
and then it was frozen. And then I believe what happened is that the original company was going to hold on to the money, and then I think the government made them freeze it a little bit longer, and then in the end, I'm not sure. I will not say this 100% with absolute certainty, but I believe that what happened is that there was a link that was put up that people would have to go to reclaim their money. It wasn't just like automatically reinserted into their bank account. I believe they had to apply to get their money back. And then the second round, where they raised, I believe, another 10 to $12 million with a Christian type GoFundMe deal. I don't know what happened with that money. I'm going to assume that most of it just made it back into people's pockets because otherwise Canadians would be outraged. But I
Sure.
believe some of that money also came from outside of Canada as well. So I don't know what they would do with those funds.
That's the last thing I heard about it was the first round and that they had a link for people to do, but they only had 2 weeks to claim it. So if that news wasn't being shared on the mass media, very few places shared that information.
Right.
Maybe some of them didn't, and I don't know if it was kept by the company or the government. But either way, I wanted to ask because someone from the Matrix Minds sent me that question to ask you.
Yeah.
I want to do a quick lightning round with you. I'm going to ask you about 5 or 6 personal questions so that everyone here gets to know you as a person more instead of the free speech advocate that you are, instead of the podcast
Right.
host that you are. Just as a human being, I'm going to ask you some stupid,
No
very
problem.
benevolent questions. What's
And
your favorite color?
And Rob, just before I answer that question, I just want to say, just on kind of like a last note in regards to all the things that I
Sure.
spoke on, and how I get fired up sometimes, right? And it's because I'm really emotional. I'm not angry at anyone. I don't harbor that anger towards anybody. I pray for Justin Trudeau every night because I believe somewhere inside, with all the things that I disagree with, that he has love in his heart, whether it be for his wife, his kids, family members, people he's close to. People are innately good. And I don't understand this situation, scenario, circumstances around him that's having him make the decisions that he does. And I think about that when it comes to each and every person. And just like you always say, you never know what a person is going through. And
Yeah.
so always tend to side on caution and just be kind, simply because you can. And I think this is a really great opportunity for all of us that went through trauma, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. We all went through a trauma over the past 2 years, and to step in the direction of kindness, love, abundance. And even though you may not be ready to forgive right now, to at least start walking towards forgiveness, to start just taking the steps to maybe being ready to forgive, and to just be the bigger person and being able to reconcile your feelings, not needing to have someone say that they're sorry, or having somebody else having to admit that they were wrong. I just wanted to get that out there, because I get fired up sometimes so much, Rob, is that I even in my message sometimes don't necessarily deliver the message in the most abundant way. But it's really important for even just in me acknowledging that maybe I didn't do my best job, and I don't do my best job all the time, is that we're all human, right? And we all make mistakes, and just being aware and knowing that we can do better is really just the most important thing. So thanks for letting me say that. And my favorite cover is black.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you for
no
sharing, because that all the sentiment that you shared too, I resonate with highly, and that's why I've appreciated you as a person too, as well as doing what you do outside of your podcast and outside of your sphere of sharing. So, all right. So black is your favorite color. What is your what's your favorite song and or band?
Oh man, my favorite song. There are so many, but I always this is so silly. I'm desperately single at 45. I've been single for a very, very long time. And I never really saw myself getting married. But if I was ever to play like this carousel of just like this alternate universe that I'm living in, and I'm getting married, and everyone that I know and love is around me, and a song hits, it is Phil Collins' Groovy Kind of Love, and I'm grabbing my wife's ass for everybody to see and giving her a big fat kiss on the face.
Well, you heard it here first. Single ladies who like Jason, you can always contact him too. He's a handsome fella, and if you like what you heard, you'll probably love him lifelong. So you can be the lady.
Right, there we
Sorry, I
go.
had to put you out there, buddy.
No problem. I appreciate it. You're a good wingman. You're a good
I
wingman.
try. No, that's a beautiful song. And let's see, what about a favorite place when you're in nature, just for the beauty? Any place you've ever been in the world, any place you want to go to?
You know what? There's so much that really surrounds this. I'll try not to get too deep into it, because I know it's a lightning round. I went to Alberta right in the middle of the pandemic, because at that point they had dropped all their mandates. And I had always been wanting to go to Alberta, and I'd always heard of people talking about the mountains. And like, I love to take pictures. And I just remember driving in from Edmonton, and I'm getting into like all the mountain ranges, and I'm stopping the car like every 20, 30 seconds to take a picture of something else. And then I eventually realized that, like, there is so much beauty around me, is that, I mean, I could literally just have my camera out all day. So I'll really save it for the special shots and when my heart really feels it. But I have never been so present in my life than I was when I was in Alberta, went to Canmore, Jasper. Like, I did the whole thing. And there's something that is so magical about the size and scale of these mountains that really made me feel, for the first time in a long time, so small, and not in a scarcity type of way, but just like an understanding of like my position like on this planet, and how there has to be something more, like a greater than, something much more powerful, a universal force, just to be able to make those things. Like, it was almost like seeing those mountains, Rob, was like seeing a spaceship, like a massive spaceship. I could not comprehend the size and scale that something like that was on this planet.
That's a moment that I call seeing the face of God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's beautiful.
Yeah, it changed me, dude.
I bet. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really great. What about your favorite food? What's your favorite thing to eat?
Everything. If it's in a pub, I'll eat it. Like, I really like I'll say steak. I'll go with steak.
So you're a pub guy. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Pub foods are great. We had one in a town that I grew up in called Schoolcraft. It was called Bud's Bar. My heart almost broke when I heard that they had closed down last year.
Oh.
They just had somebody open it up with all the original menus, so I was so happy to hear that.
I bet
I
they
haven't
had a good
eaten there in
club
20
sandwich.
years.
Did they have
They
a good club?
did,
See,
and
that's what it. Right.
and the pizza.
Oh yeah, buddy.
The pizza was good too. Last question: what is your favorite childhood memory?
Oh, you might make me cry, Rob.
Oh,
I lost my mom 7 years ago, and it's something that has really shaped me into the person I am today. It took a while, uh, but I always come to this memory. It's probably like the earliest memory that I have of my mom, and maybe I'd be 2, 3, no older than 4, and she's just getting ready at her dresser and like putting on her earrings or stuff like that, and just putting my head on her lap. And that's something I did many years moving forward. I was always very affectionate towards my mother. So it would just be, my head on my mother's lap, and how I'd give away years of my life to spend just minutes with her again.
mm. Yeah, we've talked about this before. My dad passed in 2015. It was the most brutal, heartbreaking thing in my life, because he was such a dear friend and an amazing human being. So I feel you there, and thank you for sharing that with me. I know those are rough
Yeah.
subjects, but thank you. I want to give everybody an opportunity to hear where to find you. Of course, we have the links in the thing, but before we do that, I want to say two things for those of you guys who are here from the Matrix Mind Media. Yes, we will have the live stream Matthew will be doing at 12 o'clock with the Matrix Minds. If you're not a part of there, the link for the Facebook is in our affiliate links at the bottom of the description. You can go there and watch. Amazing show. Secondly, I want to thank you for coming. I know you're a busy dude. I know you put a lot of time and energy into your work. I just want to thank you. It's hard to see people in our community now who are doing what you're doing. It's very rare. It's very uncommon, but you're bringing your excitements, your passions, and your love to the forefront of every conversation with everyone, and you're not using your judgment to navigate you. And it's been most brutal thing I think in the last 2 years is people recognizing their judgments and their biases.
Mm-hmm.
And you have worked diligently and beautifully on that. So I just want to thank you uh, for getting to know me after we did your show, and spending the time talking that we have. Thank you for that, and thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for leading with your heart, brother. We need more of that in the world, and I'm grateful for you being here and doing it.
Oh, thanks, man. And getting to know you has been a gift. And I have like such good energy. I've been reading through the comments throughout this whole thing, and I'd like to thank you, the person that's taking a moment to get a little bit more about me. I know y'all love Rob. Rob's great, and that's why you're here. But to stay and stick around and to be interactive, I've even see there's a lady in here that generally never comments and said she wanted to make this the big coming out party. So I really appreciate that too. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with me, your friends, and the things that are passionate to you.
Absolutely, brother. This is what the show is all about. Just like you, I want to have good conversations with good people with as many perspectives and as many experiences that can be shared. That I think that's the only way to push forward with growing as a collective is be in each other's spaces and learn about each other. And this is one of the beautiful ways to do it. Um, can you let everybody know, is there anything that's coming up for you, any show that you're specifically excited about, anything like that? And where can people find you if they want to look at your podcast or your
Right.
social media?
I'm going to be dancing at Chippendales this Saturday, 8 p.m.
Hey.
Right? Hey. All right. No, but I do have a podcast that I do every Tuesday at 7:30. That would be Eastern time. A lot of it has been focused on mandates, but there's also some stuff in there about personal development, etc. But it's a lot of me just having people on to share their stories, and not so much about me, to be quite honest, because I believe that no one can disagree with that person's reality. You can not want to take their opinion, but that's okay. That they're speaking their truth, and you can align with it or not. I mean, all my social medias are at JManIsAlive. That's at JMANISALIVE. And I believe Rob put like my link tree in the description, so you can find all my social medias in there. And some of the stuff you'll hear will be fiery. A lot of it won't be, but you'll get a nice taste. I'm both good cop and bad cop. I get a little bit like intense and super passionate, and then I come in and I give you a big warm bear hug, and I just let you know that I'm so happy to have you here.
And for those of you in the social media, the links we put in the chat too, Kalina shared them for our Facebook group, and I shared them she shared them for our YouTube people. I shared them for all the Facebook people and all the Matrix Mind Media people. So thank you for being here, brother. I appreciate your time, energy, your love. I appreciate your presence, and definitely we'll have to do this again, brother.
All right, I hope so.
Absolutely. We look forward to next year, and we'll have you back on next year, and we'll do some more chatting.
All right, take care, brother.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. All of you guys who are here, I want to thank all of you for being a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, which is hosted by the Enlightenment Evolution Network and the Matrix Mind Media, and also presented onto the Forbidden Knowledge News Network and the Conscious Awakening Network. You can find our show on any of these platforms, and they are live broadcasts from the Matrix Mind Media and the Enlightenment Evolution Network and our Facebook pages. All the links are down in the description. I want to thank all of you who stuck around despite maybe some different opinions than yours being expressed. I want to thank all of you who stuck around for the show in general when you usually are here to see my channeling. I want to thank all of you guys for being a part of my life too, because this energy of me sharing is based from an excitement of mine to be a part. In the channeling, I'm very far away while everyone gets their chance to communicate and hang out. So for me, it was initially about being fun and being exciting, but it blossomed into the ability to do these things and have the communications that I felt were very important with the people and the subjects that I also thought were important. So thank you for hanging around. As you guys are aware, more announcements will come as the shows come. You can find us on any of the links down in the description on several platforms. And with the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, they have us on Spreaker. They have us on Podcast and a couple other platforms that I'll be more specifically able to share at a later time as we're setting those up now. It's still very new. And you can find us, of course, on the Matrix Mind Media Conscious Awakening Network. So thank you guys for being a part of this. Thank you for the networks who are sharing the show with everyone. Thank you, Matthew, for letting us live stream with the Matrix Mind Media. And everyone who is interested can go to the Matrix Mind Media show. It starts at midnight, which is in 22 minutes from now, Eastern Time, which is 9 Pacific Time. And we will put that link in the description. It's the Matrix Mind Media, but we'll put that link also in the pinned comments in the comment section so that if you're checking this out when we're not live, you'll be able to pop in and check the replay of that too. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of the show, and I will see you guys next week, as in every week, Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 Pacific on the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer, and I will see you on the other side. Good night, guys.